The town of Ravens Hollow was nothing more than a dot on the map, forgotten by time and erased from the memory of most. Thick fog always lingered around its borders, and locals said it was alive, waiting to swallow anyone foolish enough to enter. Evelyn, Marcus, and Daniel weren't believers in old legends. They were explorers of the unknown, content creators hungry for the next story that would keep their audience glued to the screen. So, with cameras in hand, they drove into Ravens Hollow one late evening, determined to uncover what the mist was hiding. The moment they crossed the boundary, their phone lost all signal. The road behind seemed to vanish in the fog, as if the town had closed its jaws around them. The houses were silent, windows shattered, doors hanging loose like broken teeth. Yet something about the place felt aware, as though unseen eyes trailed their every step. They decided to spend the night in the abandoned inn near the square. Dust and mold covered everything, but the furniture was still arranged as if the guests had just fled. On the counter lay a guest book with the last date marked nearly 50 years ago. The final page read only one word in red ink: stay. That night, Evelyn awoke to the sound of whispers. At first, she thought it was the wind, but then she saw the reflection in the cracked mirror across the room. A pale figure stood behind her, eyes hollow, its mouth open but no words escaping. She turned, and nothing was there. In the hallway, Marcus swore he heard footsteps following him. Each time he turned, the sound stopped. Daniel found the basement door unlocked despite it being nailed shut earlier. From the blackness below rose a stench of rot and something faintly metallic, like rust or blood. Sleep was impossible. They gathered in the lobby, their nerves raw. The mist outside pressed against the windows, almost breathing. Then, from the silence, the inn's old bell rang once, slow and heavy. They hadn't touched it. Something in Ravens Hollow was awake, and it knew they were here. The inn seemed determined to keep them inside. Each door they tried to push open was jammed, and when Daniel finally managed to crack a window, the fog outside surged in like it was alive, forcing them to slam it shut. Marcus, still clutching his camera, insisted they investigate the basement. "That's where the story is," he whispered, though his voice trembled. Evelyn didn't want to go, but the sound of the bell still echoed in her ears, urging them downward. They tore the nails free, one by one, from the basement door. The wood creaked like bones breaking. A blast of air, cold and foul, hit them the moment it opened. The stairs groaned under their weight as they descended into the black pit. Their flashlights revealed a stone chamber, damp with moisture. The walls lined with strange markings, symbols etched deep, some filled with what looked like dried black tar. In the center of the basement sat a rusted iron chair, bolted to the floor. Shackles dangled from its arms, still stained. Beside it, a mirror leaned against the wall, its glass fractured into spiderweb patterns. Daniel stepped closer, and though his reflection stared back, there was another figure in the glass, a tall shadow, faceless, standing directly behind him. "Don't move," Evelyn hissed. She raised her light, but the space behind him was empty. The shadow remained only in the mirror, closer now, its hand stretching toward Daniel's shoulder. The bulb in Marcus's flashlight flickered, sputtering as the air grew heavier. From the far corner of the basement came a scraping sound, like nails dragging across stone. A voice followed, low and wet, whispering words none of them could understand. Then the mirror cracked with a sharp snap. Shards tumbled across the floor, but the reflection didn't shatter, it remained intact. The shadow figure stepping out of the fractured glass as though it had been waiting decades for release. The basement was no longer a place for exploration. It was a cage, and the door had been opened. They burst from the basement, slamming the door behind them. Though they knew it was useless, the mirror's cracking still echoed in their ears, and the thought of that shadow stalking free made the air feel colder. Outside, the mist had thickened. It swallowed the inn, the square, even the stars above. Their flashlights could barely cut through it, revealing only fragments of the town, a crumbling fountain, a toppled lamppost, the faint outline of shops long abandoned. "Where is everyone?" Evelyn whispered, though she knew the answer. Raven's Hollow wasn't empty, it was watching. As they walked, every step echoed unnaturally loud, bouncing off invisible walls. Doors creaked open on their own, and shutters banged though there was no wind. From the fog emerged outlines of people, standing still to still. Evelyn raised her light, but the forms dissolved instantly into the mist, leaving only the impression of faces, mouths open, eyes hollow. Daniel stopped suddenly. "Listen." At first there was nothing, then a faint hum, like a chorus beneath the ground. The sound swelled until it seemed to rise from the cobblestones, vibrating their bones. Marcus tried recording, but his camera glitched, screen flickering with static. Shadows began stretching along the buildings, elongating, bending in unnatural ways. They weren't cast by the explorers' lights, they moved on their own. One shadow peeled itself from the wall, crawling across the stone like liquid darkness, slithering toward them. They ran. The fog closed tighter, streets twisting in impossible directions. They should have reached the edge of town, but every turn only brought them back to the square. The fountain loomed again, cracked and dry, a symbol carved into its side glowing, faintly red, the same markings from the basement. The hum rose into a scream. The ground beneath them split, a fissure tearing through the square. From its depths came dozens of hands, pale and twitching, clawing at the air as if desperate to drag someone down. Raven's Hollow wasn't abandoned. Its citizens were still here, trapped between worlds, waiting for company. Beyond the square, the fog revealed a massive structure looming, like a shadow over the town, the Raven's Hollow Asylum. Its iron gates hung crooked, the words on its rusted sign barely legible. Evelyn felt her stomach twist, as if every instinct screamed to turn back. But the streets had shifted again, guiding them here like cattle to slaughter. Inside, the asylum smelled of rot and dampness. The walls were lined with peeling paint. Old wheelchairs overturned in the corridors. Each step echoed through the empty halls, though sometimes they weren't sure the footsteps belonged to them. They found patient files scattered across the floor, yellowed pages with names crossed out in red. Every photograph of a patient had its eyes burned away. One file was still intact, lying open on a desk. Marcus's full name. His photograph, but dated 50 years ago. He froze, insisting it was some cruel trick. But Daniel and Evelyn exchanged a glance, their fear deepening. The ink was aged. The paper brittle, it wasn't new. Suddenly, the intercom system crackled to life. Though the asylum had no power, a distorted voice whispered their names, drawing them deeper into the halls. Lights flickered overhead, revealing doors with claw marks carved into them. Some bent as if something inside had tried to tear its way out. In the operating theater, a table lay under a single flickering bulb. Restraints dangled from its sides, soaked in stains that had never faded. The room felt suffocating, as if 100 screams still lingered in the air. Then came the sound of dragging chains, echoing through the corridors. A figure shuffled into view, a patient's uniform torn and soaked, its face hidden behind a cracked mask. More figures followed, their bodies jerking unnaturally, heads twitching at sharp angles. Marcus raised his camera, desperate to record, but the screen only showed static. In that white noise, faces flickered, patients screaming, doctors grinning. The same shadow from the mirror now looming larger, clear. The asylum was not just a relic. It was alive, and it had been waiting for them. They fled deeper into the asylum, though every hallway looked the same. Evelyn's breath came in gasps, her flashlight shaking as it lit fractured tiles and rusted doors. Behind them, the dragging of chains grew louder, joined by the shuffle of countless feet. Marcus's camera was useless now, but he still carried it, as though letting it go would mean surrender. "It's recording something," he muttered. The screen was pure static, yet faint shapes flickered across it, faces pressed against the glass, mouths opening in silent screams. They burst into the chapel, a cavernous room with rotting pews and shattered stained glass windows. At the center hung an enormous bell, blackened with age, suspended by chains that groaned under its weight. It was the same bell they had heard their first night in Raven's Hollow. The moment they entered, the doors slammed shut. The fog seeped under the cracks, curling around their feet. The bell swayed without touch, its low toll shaking the walls. With each strike, their vision blurred, the room twisting until they could no longer tell where they stood. Shadows filled the chapel, rows of figures sitting in the pews as if attending a service. Their faces were blank, featureless masks, their hands folded in silence. At the altar stood the faceless shadow from the mirror. Taller now, its form sharpened, real. Daniel stepped forward, drawn against his will. His body trembled, his eyes rolled back as the bell tolled again. "It wants him," Evelyn whispered, trying to pull him back. But the shadow's hand rose, and Daniel froze in place. The air grew so heavy it crushed their chests. Marcus dropped to his knees, clutching the camera as though it were an anchor. "It's feeding," he gasped. Evelyn screamed his name, but Daniel's body jerked violently. His voice lost beneath the sound of the bell. With one final toll, the shadow spread its arms. The faceless congregation rose in unison, their heads turning toward Evelyn and Marcus. The service had only just begun, and they were the last offerings. The bell's final toll left a silence heavier than sound. Daniel collapsed at the altar, his body unmoving. Evelyn tried to reach him, but the faceless congregation turned their heads in unison, and she froze under their empty gaze. Marcus still clutched the camera. The static shifted, and through it, he saw not just the chapel, but another place, an endless corridor lined with doors, each opening into nightmares. He realized the camera wasn't broken. It was showing Raven's Hollow as it truly was, a prison of the forgotten, where the living and the dead blurred into one. "Evelyn," he whispered, "we're not supposed to leave." The shadow at the altar stretched, its form blotting out the dim light. It pointed toward them, and the congregation began to rise, their movements stiff, jerking, like puppets pulled by invisible strings. The chains of the great bell snapped one by one, the metal groaning as if eager to fall. Evelyn grabbed Marcus's arm. "We have to fight it." But Marcus only stared at the screen. The camera showed him and Evelyn already seated among the congregation, their faces blank, waiting. His hand trembled. He didn't want to look, but he couldn't stop. The bell dropped. The sound shook the chapel, rattling bone and soul alike. Darkness consumed the room, and the figures closed in. Evelyn screamed his name, but her voice vanished into the void, carried away by the mist. The camera clattered to the floor, its lens cracked. It kept recording, but there was no one left behind it. Just fog, shadows, and the tolling of a bell that would never stop. Somewhere in Raven's Hollow, a new entry appeared in the inn's guest book. 3 names, signed in a trembling hand. The last word, written in red, was the same as before, S-T-A-Y. The camera clattered to the floor, its cracked lens glowing faintly in the dark chapel. Though no one held it, it continued to record, static rippling across the screen like water disturbed by unseen hands. Evelyn's scream had already been swallowed by the fog, and Marcus's final words hung in the air like a ghostly echo. The congregation sat back in their pews, silent, waiting, as if satisfied with what had been claimed. The bell hung shattered above them, its pieces glimmering faintly like shards of black glass. Then the mist shifted. Slowly, the chapel melted away, and the town returned to view. The fountain bubbled though it was dry. Windows reflected light though there was no sun, and doors swung open to reveal corridors that stretched into endless night. Raven's Hollow was alive again, not as it had been, but as it had always wanted to be. the streets filled with faint outlines of figures, transparent, drifting, each with hollow eyes that turned toward the inn. In its lobby, the guest book sat open, its pages moving as though touched by invisible hands. Line after line appeared, names written in a frantic script, filling every page until it seemed no space was left. The final name, however, was written with calm precision. The camera screen went dark. For a moment, silence reigned. Then, faintly, the tolling of the bell returned, not from the chapel, not from the square, but from everywhere at once. The fog spread outward, beyond the town's boundaries, creeping into forests, along rivers, across roads that once led away. Raven's Hollow was no longer content with visitors wandering in. Now, it was reaching outward, and somewhere, in the faint static of forgotten devices, a voice whispered, "Stay."